Salibonani, greetings and welcome to the Girls Table podcast. My name is Bekezela Mguni. In my podcast today, I'm talking to Lucia Masuka, the Executive Director with Amnesty International Zimbabwe, to discuss the PVO Bill. Siyakwamukela, Lucia. And please, can you explain what the PVO Bill is all about and whether it aligns with the provisions of the 2013 Constitution of Zimbabwe?
Private Voluntary Organization Amendment Bill is a bill that seeks to amend the Private Voluntary Organization Act, which has been in place since 1965. The Private Voluntary Organization Act provides for the registration of private voluntary organizations, which are organizations that do various works, including charitable work. So this act has been in place since 1965. But what has been happening is that non-governmental organizations have always had the option to either register as private voluntary organizations under this particular act, or to operate as associations or common law universities and trusts. So there has been that flexibility, and there is that flexibility currently. But now this amendment seeks to compel all non-governmental organizations to register as private voluntary organizations. And what it means is organizations that have already been operating as trusts and common law universities are also being compelled to register as private voluntary organizations. The challenge with this approach is that there is a risk, and a real one, in view of what has just been happening generally in the context where certain organizations have come under attack by government, and where certain organizations at one point were stopped from operating on the basis that they were not registered as private voluntary organizations, organizations such as COTRAD, and they had to make an application, to the High Court about 2-3 years ago. So there's a real risk and fear that organizations that are already operating as some organizations that are already operating as universities, as common law universities or trusts, may actually be denied registration, with the result that they will not be able to continue with their operations. And denial of such registration clearly will be a violation of freedom of association, because Section 58 of our Constitution provides for freedom of association. And essentially what it means is that organizations should be free to, take different forms and to, operate, like as in the current case, as, common law universities or trust, and be able to do their work without necessarily having to go the registration route. So that is one particular provision in the Constitution that is at risk of being infringed in the event that this piece of legislation is enacted, because there is no guarantee that organizations that have already been operating as trusts and common law universities will be registered under this particular legal framework, or under the private voluntary organization if it is amended. So those are some of the concerns that organizations that are currently operating have, as well as communities, to say what guarantee do we have that when this piece of legislation is enacted, organizations will definitely get the registration, because the provisions therein in the Act provide that the registrar can actually deny registration, perhaps if certain requirements are not met, if they deem it necessary or if they see it fits that that particular registration, that particular organization should not be registered. So these are some of the concerns as they relate to, infringement of or violation of the Constitution.
Thank you so much, Lucia. What do you think about the government stated reasons for introducing the PVO bill, such as complying with FATF recommendations or preventing political activity?
Government in this particular bill points out that the rationale for the bill is to comply with the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force to combat the abuse of charity organizations in advancing terrorism and money laundering. However, what's important to note is that non-governmental organizations are not among the high threat sectors in Zimbabwe as far as money laundering or advancing terrorism is concerned. Then it's also key to note that Zimbabwe was actually removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list. It initially had been designated as a country at risk, but it was subsequently removed from that particular list to show that it's not a country which is at risk. Then there's no evidence really that non-governmental organizations have been used for money laundering and advancing terrorism. So the reasons that are being advanced by government have no basis really when you look at it, and that explains why civil society organizations as well as communities are saying the real reason really could be to just control non-governmental organizations as well as interfere with the operations of non-governmental organizations. So I would really challenge the reasons that are stated in the bill as the reasons for putting in place this bill, because the what we call the mischief that the bill is trying to address is not really there. But one would just conclude that the rationale for the bill really is to control non-governmental organizations through the various provisions that are contained in the amendment bill.
Are there any alternative approaches that could address the government's concerns about money laundering and terrorism financing without unduly restricting the activities of CSOs?
Yeah, so the alternative approaches to combating money laundering and terrorism are already there in place in the Zimbabwean legal framework. So we have the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act that is already in place, as well as the Suppression of Foreign and International Terrorism Act. And this is adequate and can be used for purposes of combating money laundering and terrorism. So the concerns that government may have can be addressed through these pieces of legislation, should they arise, amongst non-governmental organizations.
Thank you so much, Lucia, for making time to explain to us what the PVO bill is all about. And to umphakathi, please make sure you attend the public hearings and make sure your voice is heard. Umphumela ozaba khona nge-PVO bill wazi nawe ukuthi voice yakhe khona. Until next time, from the Girls Table and me, your host Bekezela Mguni. Siyabonga. Please don't forget to follow us on our social media pages, and please go and check our website www.thegirlstable.org. Until next time, siyabonga.